Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and today's topic is on maturity or being mature or maturing. I think originally I had it as growing up and how, but want to look at the fact that, let me let me share the screen so that you can see my computer, and we'll start right here with maturity. I love this quote from Ray Kroc. He was the founder of McDonald's, and he said, "It is better to be green and growing than to be ripe and rotting." And I thought that was so familiar or so appropriate to this, because originally had it as growing up, that we need more maturity and to grow some more no matter what stage we are at in our age level. But the fact that maturity, that the word maturity is Latin, and it was developed back in 1668, and it was Latin for ripeness, to be ripe. And so I thought we'd talk about, being mature. So I want to start off with some wisdom from Little House on the Prairie. I was watching the program, and Laura had interacted with a classmate the classmate had interacted with Laura that hurt her tremendously. She was really disappointed. And her mom was trying to encourage her. Her mom said to her, was trying to encourage her. Anyway, and Laura's lament was, "I'm afraid to grow up. I'm afraid that I won't know how to handle life situations because I don't know how to handle this one." And Laura's mom gave her some very great wisdom in 3 different segments, and I put them down here. So her mom's insight was, "I guess nobody grows up all the way," because Laura had thought she was grown enough to be able to handle a situation like this, but she wasn't. And so mom was encouraging her that maybe nobody grows up all the way. And then she also said to her, "There is a little girl inside every woman, and there is a little woman inside every girl." So I thought that was really wisdom. Of course, this applies to the male species also. There's a little boy inside every adult, and there is a little woman or a little man inside every little boy. And then after they had talked some more about it, and Laura was beginning to be a little bit, maybe I can go on in life and not be afraid to grow up, afraid to mature. Laura's mom gave her this advice, is that as you put some distance to this hurt, you can look back and find some humor in it. And so we'll look at that a little more in depth as we go on, looking back and finding some humor in something. So in keeping with the Little House on the Prairie wisdom, let's look at the wisdom from Dr. William Glasser, the founder of reality therapy and choice theory. And reality therapy, from his vernacular, from the Identity Society that he wrote on page 103, he says that it is a system of ideas designed to help those whose identity with failure, to learn some new ideas if you have an identity with failure, so that the person can learn to gain a successful identity, and to then help those who are already successful to maintain their competence and to help others become successful. So it is learning to have a good, healthy ID, an identity of you. So I was thinking about this and how that things change while staying the same. I mean, I just think about the laws of the universe, which includes, among many other things, the fact of gravity. I mean, in this day and age, in the 2023s, we are well aware of gravity, And except maybe for a child that falls down, we may give them some information, but just everybody knows about gravity. We didn't have to think about that back when, that gravity has gone on from day one. It's just that maybe we were not familiar with it. And just like the weather, there's all kinds of weather changes. There's all kinds of changes regardless. But regardless, the sun does rise every day. It's just has been going on. That's a continuum. That's a consistency to it. Even though we have daylight savings time, which we don't save the time itself, we just save either it being darker when we get up or a little bit lighter when we get up. But all of these laws of the universe really do help us. And so part of that, kind of linking it in with reality therapy, is to have, in wanting to be more mature, is to have someone in our life who really cares about us, who really cares, and maybe has some little insight himself. And this can be, of course, it can be someone in your family, except that I have found that family interaction has a tendency to be both positive and negative, even though it can turn out to be good. But whether it's a therapist or a teacher or a counselor, it's someone who really cares about you and knows that you can, someone that is dedicated to knowing that change is possible, so that we can speak the positivity into the life of the other person who has identified with failure or with not succeeding. They may not necessarily see it as failing all the time, but at least I'm not making the steps forward that I intend to and want to. It is also working with someone who has the ability to understand truth or consequences. And that it's kind of an either or. It meets right in the middle. That it's either yes or it's no. It's either truth or consequences. And so it's the person that, in understanding truth or consequences, can help the person with the low identity to be able to judge their own behavior as to whether or not they are acting competently or incompetently. Are they being responsible or irresponsible? That we can be able to judge our own behavior, not to put yourself down, but to get honest with yourself as to whether my comments are positive or negative, as to whether or not we are hurting ourselves or whether we're hurting others. And so to be able to understand that. And then also someone being dedicated to becoming disciplined. And that dedication to becoming disciplined, it is, I want to kind of go back up here to a couple of these, someone who cared. My friend had a good friend, Pat, and we were just friends by association. We'd met each other and we would just do things together because we enjoyed one another's company. And then also someone who really cares about you, and this one that made a huge change in my life, was my friend Gloria. And we even became each other's, we met once a month and we became each other's coach, life coach. And we would do what our successes had been and encourage each other to continue on in that success. Or we would look at, and then someone who is dedicated to knowing change. I think about the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step program, that to keep coming back, that is dedicated to the possibility of change. Maybe you're not changing right now, but keep coming back. Let's keep interacting with each other. Let's keep learning and knowing together. And then also in teaching this, I like, one of the sayings in the AA is, if you work the plan, it'll change. But I like to go take away that if, and then as you work the plan, as you begin to see the steps of changing, as you work it, then you can see the fact that change is possible. And then with that ability, that truth or consequences. Now I think about this whenever I'm looking at March Madness and watching the game with people that are rooting for my team. I mean, we're rooting for the same team, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But one's, or not only one, there's some in the rooting for the same team that says it in a really negative way. As in, well, do you think you can make it this time? Come on. Instead of encourage them, I know you can make this, or, you know, there's always a level of change in everything. And so sometimes you may make a whole bunch right in a row, but I know you can do it, as opposed to the fact of saying something negative as to, well, that the opponents make their shots. Why don't ours make shots for us? But anyway, the thing of it is often we need to have that truth or consequences in understanding, but to be a positive role model as opposed to a negative role model, even if you're rooting for the same thing. And then help that someone that can help the individual to become dedicated to being disciplined. And I like to look at it as, when you do this, then, because many times I can remember for myself personally, I would have all of these goals. I was going to call so many people and set so many appointments and, you know, that kind of stuff. And then I would get disgusted and I wouldn't do it. So I'd find myself going on in and just sitting down and turning on the TV to watch something else. And then I would get really frustrated with me. And so I began to realize, well, if I get up and do it, then it'll be done. So when you do it, then you can do something else that is more entertaining for you. So in looking at being more mature, it's looking at how attitudes are formed. And our attitudes are formed from the womb on. It's the information that we receive from birth on. And it's those, I know someone who shared with me that they were the last of the Mohicans. They were the last in a string of several children. But this child overheard several times by one of the parents that he or she was the caboose. And that person would say that quite frequently. Well, I'm the caboose. And, you know, what kind of information does that give you? You know, anyway, that aptitude, you know, how our attitudes are formed. Attitude was a French word that was coined in 1668, but it actually, instead of attitude, it was aptitude, which that aptitude means our posture. Our aptitude means the fact that we think about what we think about, that we think about our feelings, that we think about our thoughts, and that in a way that we can be more apt to understand them. Then also, attitudes are formed by our own personal processing. I mean, how do we think about what someone says about us, the input that they've given us? How do we think about it? How do we carry our own posture? How do we manage to agree or disagree with what the input that they have given? And if we do disagree, can we still realize that, you know what, I have worth and value, even if I've stepped up and made a big boo-boo? To that personal processing, that those thoughts, how we can listen to our own self-talk, so that, and realizing, wow, do I really, I mean, I know I'm not the greatest person in the world, but how much is that self-talk much more to the negative than it really needs to be? And then the third way that we form our attitudes is by the fact that we reinforce our chosen changes or not. I mean, if we continually think, well, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, we have a tendency to reinforce the negative as opposed to the positive, as opposed to there's a learning curve to everything. And so therefore, I can monitor my self-talk. I can monitor the amount of time that I can give myself credit for doing okay and for wanting to learn. And then another way that we form our attitude is whenever, and this is really a big one, is whenever we intervene at the point of behavior. Intervene at the point of behavior. As in what I was saying a minute ago, I would have all these dreams and goals, but rather than actually get in there, do it, or maybe give 5 minutes to it and then say, forget it, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to watch a program, or I'm going to just sit and appreciate life. That whenever we will intervene with our attitudes at that point of behavior, at that point when it really matters, when I do this, then I can do that. Then, so I have just a few thoughts here on ripening, regardless of our chronological age. One is to be authentic. Don't try to be someone you are not. Success is being overdoing. It is being who you are more important, and it is more important than all the things that you do. It's trying to live up to someone else's expectations can be exhausting, as well as the fact that it comes across as being fake or false, as not being true to yourself. It also can lead you to some failures and those internal conflicts of, I want to be like this, but I'm not being. So be authentic to who you are and do not try to be someone you are not. Another thought is to determine your values and set goals in keeping with those values. Determine what do you value, and then make all of your goals in life, all of your decisions based on what you value, and never allow a goal that you make to clash with one's core values. I mean, you may have these values, but then someone comes up with a shortcut, and it may not be something that would stick you in jail. It may, but if it is opposed to your value, then well, just realize that every decision has consequences. And so we want to live life so that you are comfortable with the outcome of your choices. You want to live life with harmony, that your life is in harmony with your interpersonal relationship, and that it will result in that you don't go through life always second guessing. Another thought is to be responsible for your own actions. I call it respondability. I have the ability as to how I will respond to this situation, this circumstance. It's being proactive. It's taking the initiative rather than being reactive, suffering the consequences or living with the consequences when you realize that it could have been more proactive. And then seeing that when reverses and lapses do occur, then you look forward as to how can I grow through this instead of allowing yourself to become too disappointed. And then in the process of the growing, continue to be your own genuine, authentic self. So also to schedule some time for you, make time for yourself because you do matter, and to acknowledge your own accomplishments and your achievements. You may need sufficient hours for your own relaxation and the things that you enjoy doing, and avoid the propensity to take care of everyone else and everything else. You know, matter of fact, think of the airplane, that you want to make sure that you have the, in case anything goes wrong while you're in flight, up so many thousands of miles above Earth, that you want to make sure that you have on your mask before you try to help someone else that is incapacitated. So you have to take care of you. You really won't have the time and the inclination and the empowerment to take care of others. And then always celebrate successes. Catch yourself doing something right and acknowledge it. Those small ones as well as the large ones. Pat yourself on the back occasionally. Give you an atta girl, an atta boy. Toot your own horn. It's okay to tell someone that, you know, I've done this. Don't become a braggart, but do toot your own horn. And when you acknowledge another's personality that's different from yours, you know, be able to look at it rather than passing judgment. That, oh, I didn't live up. I've wanted to be like someone, but I've not. But continue to be who you are. And then always, always, always learning from our failures. I love what Robert F. Kennedy said. He said, only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. So don't dwell on those setbacks. Learn from them and then move forward, because realize that everyone has baggage. The goal is to jettison our ego impressing guilt and help ourselves to continue to grow. And so, as we acknowledge our humaneness and can put some distance to the hurts or the embarrassments or the disappointments or the guilt or what all that is, then we can take the advice that Laura's mom gave her, and we can look back and find some humor in those errors that we made. If not humor, we can especially find some appreciation, and that takes us to emotional maturity. And so I have a quote here from Brene Brown, because I was talking about being authentic and learning to have a positive, you know, having someone that really cares about you, and your family does really care about you. But I love the way she worded this in keeping, it's in her book, Daring Greatly, and she's listed a whole bunch of things that she had learned through life, okay? So I just picked out these two paragraphs. Blah, blah, blah. I also learned that the people who love me, the people I really depend on, and we may have had an argument with them yesterday, or they may have said something disparaging at one time or another, but the people I really depend on were never the critics who were pointing at me while I stumbled. Now that's a major revelation that you can give yourself an a yay to. That I'm realizing, you know, they really never were the critics pointing at me while I stumbled. They weren't in the bleachers at all. They were with me in the arena, fighting for me and with me. Now I want to stop here before we read that final thing there that she said, is that sometimes our family does maybe fight with us, say negative things to us. But you know what? They're really on our side. It's just like going back up to the whoever is rooting for the team that is saying negative things to them. Do you think you can get it this time? And when they're really wanting them to make the basket, or, you know, make the score. So she goes on to say, nothing has transformed my life more than realizing it's a waste of time to evaluate my worthiness by weighing the reaction of the people in the stands. The people who love me will be there regardless of the outcome, of what the outcomes. The people who love me will be there regardless of the outcome, and they are within arm's reach. This realization has changed everything. Well, as you think back on this, I trust that will something that really resonates with you, of having that person that really cares about you and realizing that you can someone that really cares about you, that you can be dedicated to making choices that help to change your life. And thank you for being here, and many blessings.